Assalamu alaikum. Imagine now we have a table of all the civilizations that are in the world. So you have the European civilization coming to the table, you have the American civilization or North American civilization coming to the table, you have the Chinese civilization and Renaissance is coming to the table of world civilizations. You have the Japanese civilization coming to the table. You have the Russians coming to the table, and each of them is contributing something to humanity, something to this world that we are sharing and we're living in. Would the Muslims have a place on this table right now? And if they do, what would they be contributing? And if they don't, why don't they have a place on this table, this round table of civilizations? This is a very tough question. What will it take to bring back the Muslims to the table of civilizations as a power that is a contributing power to humanity? Again, this is not a very easy question because a lot of the us as Muslims, when we come to think about the golden age of Islam, we think about the contribution that we have done back in the day, from around the 8th century up to maybe the 11th century, um, and mainly that was the time where the contribution kind of plateaued and started to go down. But it really started during the Abbasid dynasty, the first phase of the Abbasid dynasty, that it started to use experimental science. That was a huge contribution to humanity in general, to world civilizations in general. Is that Jabir ibn Hayyan, that scientist, that great scientist, invented the lab, which is a way to test the theories. And hence, he arrived to a new chain in the chain of knowledge, that knowledge is not merely derived based on thinking, based on hypothesizing, based on deduction, intellectual deduction. No, knowledge can be derived based on experimentation. But then after that, it started to go downhill. And a lot of people, when they think about the Muslim contribution, they think about that era, which was an amazing era. It was known as the golden age of Islam. But now, if we were to come back to be a contributive factor, to a contributing factor to the world, what would that look like, and what would it take? I will mention few things that we have to overcome in order to be able to uh, start this contribution cycle again, this renaissance, this rising cycle again. The first one is being comfortable in asking tough questions. A lot of people, a lot of Muslims as well, when they come to look at the Islamic history, they find that at some point Muslims started to become less comfortable in asking the tough questions. They started to look at the idea of questioning the existing reality, questioning the existing systems, questioning the existing derivation of the jurists, as something that is of destabilizing nature, as something that would harm the faith of the believers. And that started to lead to a downfall from that point. Now, if we were to ever come back to the table of civilizations, it is important to understand the idea of questioning is what lays the foundation, the groundwork for the philosophical for the philosophical background that the civilization will be built upon. And if we are not comfortable asking questions and living with that idea that we don't have the answers yet, but we should be looking for them, then we're not going to be able to get anywhere. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect, we have to overcome a very subtle mental barrier that is actually very problematic. And that mental barrier is the idea that finding the answer is not a straightforward process, which means that the idea that the answer is out there somewhere, and if we cannot just find it immediately and with ease, then somebody else will come at some point and find it, because it is there somewhere. It's just hidden under a rock or hidden in some cave, or it's locked up in some vault that is kept from the Kendi time or from Harun al-Rashid's time or something, and somebody is just going to unlock that vault box or that treasure box and find the answer written on some tablets, and bring it to us as Muslims. If we cannot overcome that idea, we're going to be constantly stuck in a lethargic position. The problem with being stuck in that lethargic position is that we're not going to be willing to do work. What that means is that we're not going to be willing to exert the extreme amount of effort, mental as well as physical effort, that is needed to be able to find the answer. The third mental barrier is that, which is very related to the second one, is that finding the answer, or what we think is the answer, is not going to be the answer from the first time. This is very tough for people to believe, because generally people in general they want to be successful on the first attempt. For civilizations, that is almost impossible. Even if you look at contemporary civilizations, like for example the Chinese dynasty and the Chinese governance has gone through three very, very major intellectual and industrial revolutions before, and all these three have failed miserably before they have succeeded on the fourth one, which is what led them to where they are right now. If we look at the Muslim world right now is in a lot better shape than what the Chinese landscape was before they started to attempt to find solutions. But they have failed on a major level three times before they have succeeded on the fourth one. Now, some might say, okay, well, the government of China has always had that vision to be able to revive the Chinese race as well as the Chinese civilization, and bring it back to greatness. And hence, they have leadership to follow. What if our governments don't have that? That's a very good question. What if the Muslim majority countries' government don't have that? And what if the non-Muslim governments are not willing to help with that? This is a very good question. We have to understand that there are two paths towards rising any sort of civilization. The first one is something that is based on a leader, some sort of leadership. That could be a government, could be a person, could be a warrior, could be a savior, whatever that is, that people will just follow. And that leadership, that group of people or that individual that is looking to rise up with the civilization is doing all the thinking and all the experimentation. If that exists, then also note that there will be failures, just like the Chinese. They have failed three times. So having that government that really cares about the rise of the Islamic civilization is not enough, because they're not going to find the answer immediately. But what if that doesn't even exist? A lot of people would say a lot of the governments that are in the Muslim majority countries right now are corrupt. And a lot of the non-Muslim governments, whether it is the Western governments in North America or in Europe, or even the Eastern governments like the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Russians, they really don't want that region to rise. Fair enough. It is important for us to understand that is a fair game. Sitting on the table is not going to be an easy thing. Coming to the table of civilizations is not something that is going to be carpeted with ease. As a matter of fact, it is natural to have that competition between all civilizations. So going to bed and crying, for people to allow you to have a space on the table, that's not going to happen. So then what is the next step? What if there is no leadership, if there is no government that can contribute to that, what is the next step? The next step is what's called the cumulative good or the cumulative experience, which means that every person is contributing something towards humanity, towards the civilization that they're trying to bring back. Um, and with time, all these contributions they add cumulatively until there is enough critical mass of good that will result in the rise of that civilization again. And what that means as well is that because the contribution to that civilization and to humanity in general is something that is cumulative, you as an individual living in this time and age, you might never see the result right now. But what you're seeing is that you are contributing to humanity. You're doing your part. You're contributing to the civilization. You're contributing to the goodness in this world. And at some point in the future, all these corrective forces from those small, tiny individuals in the big scheme of things will end up building towards something that is of critical mass and something that can finally generate that change that people are hoping for. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.